Hi friends, this video will hope to explain the Missouri Compromise and the Compromise of 1850 and provide a little direction on your task for this assignment. So remember that our target here is that I can critique the Missouri Compromise and the Compromise of 1850, two attempts by the United States government to settle the issue of slavery in the West. So the skill that we're working on here is critiquing the reasoning of others, where you evaluate arguments, explanations, and solutions and identify logical fallacies and missteps. So logical fallacies are almost like flaws that are kind of baked into an argument or a plan. So that's what we're going to be seeking out with the Missouri Compromise and the Compromise of 1850. So let's start with a little background on the separation between the North and the South. So in the 1760s, two surveyors were sent out to establish an official border between several states, including Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Maryland. And those two surveyors, Mason and Dixon, Charles Mason and Jeremiah Dixon, were sent out to draw this line. And so it's called the Mason-Dixon line. And if you've ever driven from Pennsylvania into Maryland, you've probably seen a little sign that says Mason-Dixon line. And the only reason that's significant for what we're looking at in this class is because it becomes kind of the cultural and geographic divider between the North and the South. So when we talk about the North and the South during sectionalism, we're looking at everything above the Mason-Dixon line, so Pennsylvania and on up north as the North, and anything below that Mason-Dixon line from Maryland and Virginia down as the South. Okay, so the year is 1820, and the United States, as we've seen, is starting to grow and expand. It's claiming new territory, new land, and the issue that the United States is coming across is what do we do about new land and the issue of slavery? So in 1820, Missouri wanted to join the United States as a slave state. So to settle this issue, an important senator in United States history from Kentucky, his name is Henry Clay, so this guy right here, he suggested a compromise to try to keep both the slave states and the free states happy. To keep a balance of power in the Senate, to maintain an equal number of slave states and free states, Henry Clay suggested that Missouri join as a slave state and that Maine join as a free state as well. That way we would keep an equal number of both states, both sides. He also suggested, to settle the issue moving forward, that we draw a line that came to be known as the Missouri Compromise line. And this line would ban slavery above the line from there on out in the Louisiana Territory. So it's important to keep in mind that this Missouri Compromise line would only settle the issue of slavery and only ban slavery north of the line in the Louisiana Territory and farther west. So if we look at a map here, we can see way up in the northeast corner of the United States, the state of Maine would join as a free state. Missouri would join as a slave state, keeping that balance of power. And you can see that red line right there. That's the Missouri Compromise line that would determine whether slavery is allowed in different portions of the Louisiana Territory moving forward. So you can see that that line stops before reaching the east coast of the United States. This only applies to new areas that are being added out west. So your task is to find some flaws in this plan. So we're going to be critiquing the reasoning of others. The first question you're answering is, how did the Missouri Compromise attempt to settle the issue of slavery in the West? In other words, what makes this a compromise between slave states and free states? How did it try to keep both sides happy? So think about what's being added and how the issue is going to be settled moving forward. And then the second question that you're answering there, what logical fallacies are present in the Missouri Compromise? So what was wrong with this plan? Why was it kind of doomed to fail from the beginning? And to give you a hint here, if you look at the map, you will see a problem with this plan right off the bat, a reason that it was kind of a strange decision as soon as it was put in place. So that's when you're critiquing the reasoning of others, that's what you're looking at for those two questions. Okay, next, we're fast forwarding to the year 1850. And again, another state wants to join the Union. So this is after the Mexican-American War. This is after the Oregon Trail, and significantly, the Mormon Trail has been underway for a while. Gold has been discovered in California, as we've seen. So a whole lot of people want to move out to California. And so California wants to join as a free state. So up comes Henry Clay once again to suggest a compromise. And his plan this time would be to allow California to join as a free state, but to also create two new territories of New Mexico and Utah. So if you remember learning about the Mormon Trail, that was just a few years before this decision here. So we're going to add two new territories. And in those territories, the decision on slavery would be made by popular sovereignty, which means that voters in those territories would choose whether to be slave or free. So essentially, there would be an election in the territory, and the people would vote. And if the majority voted for that territory to allow slavery, then it would be a slave territory. If the majority voted to make slavery illegal, then it would be a free territory. And finally, it would also create a fugitive slave law, which we'll come back to later. That's going to be significant in a Supreme Court case down the road. But essentially, it's a law that would allow slave owners to take slaves back if they had escaped. So that's the overview of the Compromise of 1850. And some might ask, what's the difference between a state and a territory? So just to be clear, if you've heard of territories like Guam, Puerto Rico, those territories are owned by the United States, but they have some differences between territories and states, including the fact that they don't have the ability to vote in Congress, but they do have representation. They can't vote for president there. They are citizens of the United States, and they don't pay federal income tax, which is one reason why the territories and states are different from one another. But anyway, back to the Compromise of 1850. Here in this map, you can see these two new territories, Utah and New Mexico, that are being added. So again, those are territories which will use popular sovereignty to determine whether or not they allow slavery. And you see California that's being added as a free state. So if we think back to the Missouri Compromise and that attempted solution, and we think about this map right here, what you're going to do is, again, find the flaws. What are the problems with this decision? So first, how did the Compromise of 1850 attempt to settle the issue of slavery in the West? What made this a compromise between slave states and free states? So what made free states happy about this plan, and what made slave states happy about this plan? And then, again, what are logical fallacies in this compromise? So what's wrong with the plan? Look at the map. Might need to piece some things together from the Missouri Compromise, but think through what is wrong with this plan and why is it doomed to fail from the beginning. As always, if you need additional help, come talk to your teacher. I'll be happy to help you out and explain these two compromises and how to complete this skill of critiquing the reasoning of others. All right, thanks. See ya.